Welcome to the War Academy channel. Today we bring a very interesting program in which we are going to see, to what extent did the Soviets know or not, that they were going to be attacked by the Germans in the summer of 1941. Next, we are going to analyze all the warnings, signs, and reports who warned of this attack and what was the reaction of both Stalin and the senior officers of the Soviet Union. After having analyzed on this channel what the Soviets knew about German intentions in 1942 and 1943, one wonders if a mobilization of up to 3 million soldiers along with all their material, which the Germans used in Operation Barbarossa, could have been hidden. The answer is clearly no. The first to report this concentration of German troops on the border with the Soviet Union were Polish communist agents working for Moscow. These alerted, together with the Red Army troops that were on the same border, that huge amounts of troops and ammunition were being sent to the area. They warned of the construction of numerous airfields, as well as the concentration and all kinds of boats and pontoons at the river crossing points. There were up to 300 warnings of German reconnaissance planes behind Soviet lines, which provoked many diplomatic protests, but to no avail. Other evident elements were that by June 16 the German embassy in Moscow had been practically evacuated, and in the Soviet ports, not a single German ship remained. Faced with all these reports, in which it could be seen objectively that Germany was preparing for a large-scale operation, Stalin's attitude was to downplay the issue and ignore them. But what was the reason why Stalin behaved in this way? The main reason, from which many other reasons will be drawn, was that the Soviet Union in 1941 was not prepared for a full-scale struggle with Germany. A few years ago, the Red Army had been totally beheaded by Stalin's purges, and found itself without a clear and defined military doctrine. To this we have to add the fear that the German army instilled after its frenetic victories everywhere. Based on this, Stalin felt that his forces would not be ready for open confrontation against Germany until at least 1942, so any provocation to Germany that might lead to an invasion would have to be avoided. Faced with so many reports coming from Poland, Stalin commented that it was exaggeration of double agents with the sole purpose of involving the Soviet Union in the war to save the English. Let us remember that at this time, in the middle of 1941, Germany and the Soviet Union were allies, and there was no friendly relationship between the Soviets and the British. Numerous diplomats were sent to Berlin to ask why there were so many German soldiers on the border with the USSR, and the Germans in turn responded evasively. His most repeated answer was that they were military maneuvers in preparation for Operation Sea Lion, which had been decided to be held there so that they would be out of the reach of English observers and spies. This was consistent with Stalin's view, since in his view Germany would not attack until Britain had been defeated. At this point we have to point out that everyone expected that in 1940, the war on the Western Front would turn into a war of immobility and attrition similar to that of 1914. That Germany defeated France so quickly set off all the alarms in Moscow, but in any case, the British still remained. The Soviet actions to prevent Germany from attacking them in 1941 even led them to order us to shoot neither the German reconnaissance planes nor the soldiers on the ground who came to sneak into their territory. Although when two countries have diplomatic conflicts, as was the case with Germany and the Soviet Union, what is usually done first as a means of pressure is to cut off economic relations. On this occasion the opposite happened. Stalin continued until the last moment sending all kinds of petroleum derivatives, as well as large quantities of minerals to the Germans, with the intention of not giving them reasons to go looking for them themselves. While we discussed earlier the poor quality of Soviet army commanders following the recent purges, the Soviet intelligence service was heavily affected by the purges as well. In addition, the capacity of the men who now occupied the direction of these departments was far from being correct. In general terms, it can be said that they had a very limited capacity to develop good strategic analyses and early warning actions. Instead, they had to make do with the reports that came from the agents on Polish territory, and we have already seen that they did not have much confidence in them. On the other hand, the German intelligence services played a good role in their mission of total disinformation. Not only did they limit themselves to making them believe that said troop movements were training to assault Great Britain, but even Goebbels himself, with all intent, published an article in the German press announcing in June 1941 that the invasion of the British island was imminent. Another highly commented aspect is that just as the Germans had large concentrations of troops on the border with the USSR, the Soviets also had them on their side. Not entering into the eternal debate of whether the Red Army was also preparing to launch itself on Germany, what is clear is that the Germans also used this pretext to justify their presence of troops in the area, and in the eyes of the Soviet High Command, they were fully within their rights. The next trick used by the Germans was to start a series of negotiations in which they demanded that the Soviet Union rectify some issues such as its expansionist actions on Finland or the Baltic states, as well as better trade agreements. This made Stalin think that in the event of a confrontation, it would be preceded by an escalation of tension in these negotiations, and by a final ultimatum, instead of a surprise attack at any time. This trick is similar to the one used by the Japanese with the United States. But among all the points that we have just exposed, there was one that convinced Stalin that the Germans would not attack in the summer of 1941. This was the invasion of Yugoslavia and Greece during the months of April to May of that same year. This action was used as the perfect excuse why the Germans had made such a concentration of troops in the area. As if that were not enough, Stalin had received reports that the German attack would begin on May 15th, but since this operation had to be suspended due to German involvement in the Balkan campaign, it was the perfect demonstration that all the reports that Stalin had been receiving from his advisors had been false. From this point on, there were many more warnings of an impending German attack over the next few weeks, but as they failed to start, they were taken less and less seriously. As a summary, we can say that Stalin wanted to believe that the Germans were not going to initiate any offensive operations against them, and the Germans simply limited themselves to letting him know what the Soviet leader wanted to hear. Faced with the impossibility of the Germans to hide the enormous concentration of troops, he simply made himself believe that his intentions were different, and the campaign in the Balkans ended up serving as a decoy. Even with all this, Stalin issued a warning notice to his generals on the same afternoon of June 21 to put their troops on alert before an imminent German attack. However, due to the malfunction of the Soviet communications system, this alert did not reach all front headquarters. And what do you think? Do you think that the USSR also had planned to attack Germany? Do you think he had clear indications that a German attack was going to take place imminently? Do you agree with Stalin's appeasement policy until the last moment? We say goodbye here. Many thanks to everyone, especially the sponsors who make this possible. Subscribe and share this program if you liked it, and see you in the next one. See you soon.